This is Sociology, Chapter 9, Section 2, Social Classes.
There are three ways of determining social class. The first way is called the Reputational Method. In this method, people rank the hierarchy within society based on what other people may know of them. So this is based purely on reputation. There is no objectivity to it. You are simply looking at somebody and considering maybe their family background, considering their clothing, considering how they talk, how they act, and giving them some position within social society based on this. The second method is called the Subjective Method. In the Subjective Method, people rank themselves. This is obviously a faulty way of ranking people. If you were to ask most of American society where they rank themselves, they will consider themselves middle class. Most of the poverty class considers themselves middle class. Most of the upper class considers themselves to be middle class. The reason for this is that we are raised in America to constantly believe that the middle class is the common or the norm in American society. Because of this, the Subjective Method is going to have Americans ranking themselves as middle class because that is what they see as normal. They don't view themselves as abnormal. The third and final method is called the Objective Method, and this is the one that's going to be the most usable, most reliable means of ranking people in American society. When you hear people in the news talking about the middle class, the upper class, the lower class, that is based on the Objective Method. With the Objective Method, sociologists define social class in terms of income, job, and education. So they look at how much money you make, they look at your job, considering the prestige of your job, and they look at what kind of educational background you have. And once they are able to evaluate all three of these levels, they're able to determine what social class you belong to.
American social classes are divided up into several different segments. The first one we'll look at is the upper class. This is the wealthiest 1 to 3% of the population. This upper class controls somewhere in the range of 90 to 95% of all material goods, items, valuables, assets in American society. You have two groups within the upper class, the upper class and the lower upper class. The upper class is your old wealth. This is family money that's been passed on through generations. Oftentimes you can think of examples such as the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the Kennedys, groups like that. The lower upper class is new wealth. These are people who have come into money for the first time in a generation. Their family wealth previously not been very high, but they are going to be leaving great fortunes behind to their kids from here on out. Groups in this, or people in this class would include folks like Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey. These people are oftentimes actually wealthier than the upper class, but they are not considered as classy, as elite. They're not invited to the same dances, essentially. They are seen as a lower group in the American social class system. Below the upper class is the upper middle class. These are high-income business owners and professional people. Doctors, lawyers would fit into this group. They typically have college educations and advanced degrees, and because of this extensive education and the extensive effort and skills that they have attained, they are going to be compensated accordingly and make their ways into the upper middle class because of their financial resources and the respect and prestige that people have for the positions they typically hold. Below the upper middle class is the lower middle class. These are white-collar workers. These are jobs that require a little less education than the upper middle class, and because of that, they typically have less pay than the upper middle class. These people often lead traditional lives and hold traditional values, typically are pretty socially and morally conservative. They pretty much define what we would call politically moderate. They are people who are not typically extreme to one end of the spectrum or the other. Oftentimes the jobs you see lower middle class workers working include things such as teachers, retail management, and people who own their own small businesses. Below the lower middle class is the working class. These are blue-collar workers. They're the largest segment of our population. By blue-collar workers, we are talking people who do manual jobs. This could be factory work. This could be people who work industry jobs. Farmers would probably fall into this category of blue-collar workers as well. The pay of the working class is oftentimes higher or at least equal to the pay of the lower middle class, but the job is typically not seen as prestigious or as relevant to traditional American society. And part of the reason for that is because of a lack of education that is needed in order to get any kind of working class job. Many people in the working class lack any kind of traditional savings. Oftentimes people in the working class do not receive the same benefits, whether it be retirement benefits or medical care benefits that people in the lower middle class, upper middle class, and upper class receive. Below the working class is the lower class. These are the low-paying, part-time, and unemployed workers of America. It encompasses a very large and growing group in our society. Survival in this group is typically much more day-to-day, and because there is typically a lack of education among this class, there is also a pretty minimum amount of opportunities, which means that the chances for people rising up out of this lower class into the working class or lower middle class is typically pretty slim, unless they have some sort of highly valued skill in society that comes about with even in the absence of education.
There are three types of social mobility in American society. The first type is called vertical mobility. With vertical mobility, you are moving up or down between social classes. This is somebody who is working as a teacher who takes a job as a principal. With that movement, you are moving from a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year job into a job that might be paying $90,000 to $100,000. You're moving up in prestige. You are also moving up in terms of the level of power that you have. All three of those combined mean you're having upward vertical mobility. Upward vertical mobility is actually rather rare in American society. It is much more common to have downward vertical mobility due to lack of or loss of a job, loss of benefits, loss of retirement funds, issues with investments, things like this. The second type of social mobility is called horizontal mobility. With horizontal mobility, you move from one job to another without ever changing social classes. So if I'm working at Walmart and I trade jobs, I take a new job at Target. Same general position, just out working the floor, stocking shelves at both places. The pay is going to be about the same, the level of prestige is going to be about the same, and the power afforded to me is going to be about the same. That's horizontal mobility. The third and final type of social mobility we look at is called intergenerational mobility. With intergenerational mobility, you move up or down social classes between generations. So if your family is very wealthy and you are handed a nice inheritance, and then with that inheritance you blow it all gambling and end up bankrupt and homeless, that is intergenerational mobility. You have moved downward in social class between generations. Likewise, if you are born poor and are able to somehow come into wealth of some sort, you have moved up in social class, again, intergenerational mobility. When we look at American society, you have many examples of this, but we see a lot of examples in the entertainment business. Different rock stars, hip-hop musicians, pro athletes who came from pretty desperate circumstances and were able to, because of a special skill that they had developed at a younger age, make it into the professional sports arena or professional music arena and move up greatly from a very humble, poor background into a place of great wealth, power, and prestige as adults. Again, that would be intergenerational mobility.
There are several causes of upward and downward mobility in American society. When we look at the upward mobility causes, there are factors such as technology. When we see the development, especially in the internet age, of app services for phones and for mobile devices, when we see the rise of video games, various television technologies, cell phone technologies in general, that technology provides new jobs, and typically more high-skilled types of jobs, which means increased pay and then increased upward mobility. We also see changes in merchandising patterns in general that allow for a larger white-collar workforce. This large white-collar workforce is typically, again, going to be more skilled, have received more education, and thus they are going to be better compensated than previous generations. You also see increases in levels of education that are necessary at this point to keep up with technology and the changes in merchandising patterns that were mentioned previously. When we look at causes of downward mobility, there are several things that cause that as well. One is a shift in consumer tastes. When something falls out of fashion or stops being a trend, that means jobs are lost. People who invest lots of money, effort, skill, and time into the production of certain retail goods or into the provision of services of some sort, oftentimes have a very quick downward fall when that service or that good is no longer desired in American society. Technology can also create downward mobility because of the fact that certain technologies allow for the easier taking of goods. I'm thinking MP3s here and the Kazaa, LimeWire, the different illegal downloading services that are out there that have had a very detrimental negative effect on the record industry, which has led to massive numbers of record industries failing, going bankrupt, having to cut back or fire large percentages of their workers. Technology also can have a negative impact because oftentimes you see technology taking the place of workers in the more industrial types of jobs. With technology, there are less workers needed in American society, especially in the production of things, heavy machinery goods, cars, things like this, because there is such an increase in robotics that now can take care of that for us. Finally, there are general economic factors that can lead to downward mobility. If you look at American society over the past several years here, you've seen a downward trend of higher unemployment rates, inflation, issues, concerns with America's debt and the connection that it has to the taxes that taxpayers are expected to pay to the United States government. All of these factors together can lead to downward mobility as well.